if we can remember all the way back to last week, we had in Glasgow, Scotland, COP26, talking about the future of energy. And quite frankly, I'm not sure what really came out of that, but I want to ask an expert here, and we'll do that with Seth Grae, President and Chief Executive Officer of Lightbridge Corporation. Seth, thanks so much for joining us here. Again, we've got a little bit of benefit of some hindsight here, but as we look back to COP26, what are the key takeaways that you made? Was anything of substance achieved?
You know, there was little of substance achieved in terms of a formal agreement, which agreed to phase down coal instead of the original goal of phase out coal.
That's a new phrase, by the way, phasing down. I used it at dinner last night, and everybody was surprised.
Okay.
No one knew what I meant.
You sound like you're at Davos or something. And, you know, so I think that what came out of it, though, was a real search for what are the alternatives. As we do phase down and phase out coal and other fossil fuels, what are we going to do? And, you know, we've seen in the news today that Germany announced suspension of certifying the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to bring in natural gas from Russia. What are they going to do? You mentioned before fueling up your Ford F-150. It's almost like buying a new car every time you fuel it up now at these prices of gasoline. And, you know, part of what we have to do, and I just got back from an international trip where I heard a lot about this in several countries, is grow nuclear power. Yeah. That nuclear power is almost immune from these price spikes, from this inflation in energy prices.
But why don't we? You know, I was really impressed when I watched the Bill Gates documentary on Netflix, and they're one of those. It's a 3-part series. Don't know if everyone's seen it. One of them is pretty focused on nuclear, and he is making the case that we're at a stage of development now where you no longer have to worry about something like Fukushima. It's incredibly safe, and in fact, he can even use spent fuel to power new facilities, so you don't need to worry as much about the waste either. What's stopping us, Seth, from building more? Is it just the initial costs? Are they so huge?
Well, they used to be. To build these giant reactors. But what Bill Gates is talking about, what we at Lightbridge are talking about, are these new, smaller, cheaper reactors, and, you know, cost much less to build, don't, you know, have the financial risk to nearly the degree of the giant plants. And at Lightbridge, we're also designing, and with U.S. government support, testing new fuel that will make the existing plants much more economical and much safer, run 1,000 degrees Celsius cooler in the reactors, and, you know, produce zero CO2. So I think what Bill Gates is doing with new advanced kinds of reactors is great, but none of them exist yet. We look forward to them existing, and we look forward to Lightbridge helping to fuel some of the new reactors that will come out, but also companies like Lightbridge that will bring new fuels, new technology, these new safety advances to the existing reactors as well.
All right, so let me ask you this. Have you spoken with Angela Merkel or Olaf Scholz? Because in a country where the Green Party has gained a pretty exceptional amount of power, they're still burning like the dirtiest coal on the planet, and they would rather pay through the nose for dirty fuel than used nuclear reactors. Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of politics there with the Green Party in Germany holding that coalition together to stay in power. And they're totally wrong. You see this combination of three things in Germany. They have some of the dirtiest energy production in the world. They have some of the most expensive energy production in the world. And they like to brag the most that they have the greatest energy plan in the world. And it's just not working. You can't shut down nuclear and avoid having energy prices spike and having CO2 and pollution spike. And Germany's just the perfect example of it.
Seth, where are we in the United States as it relates to nuclear energy? Is there support? Is it an economic issue, or is it just some fundamental, that's just not the path we want to go?
Yeah, you know, it's somewhere in the middle. That most Americans do support having nuclear power in the country. It provides about 20% of the electricity, but much more than half of all clean power, of zero CO2, zero pollution power. And it is growing. There are 2 large reactors under construction in Georgia. There's a new small reactor that'll start construction in Idaho, and there's talk of adding some to coal plant sites in Montana and in other parts of the West and Midwest, which I think makes a lot of sense, putting these small reactors on sites that would have coal plants that shut down. Good for employment, good for keeping the connection to the electrical grid, trained workforce, et cetera. And I think a lot of the growth in nuclear in this country will come from smaller reactors at former coal sites as the years go by.
Hey, Seth, thanks so much. Seth, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, getting your thoughts on
really interesting stuff.
Global energy, nuclear. It's a conversation, as we see